Welcome to the OC. I'm Phil, and this is my co-host Corey, and tonight we're talking about the Dyatlov Pass incident. And wow, what an incident it was.
Also known as 1079.
1079. Now I saw that, in reference to some of this
peak.
stuff.
It was one of the peaks was called 1079.
Yeah.
Dyatlov was actually the name, I think, of one.
That's the guy, Igor.
The guy, like it's.
He was the leader. He was like the guy he was the guy. Leader. He was, and that's the thing about this. So I guess we should explain it because.
Okay, what is the Dyatlov? Phil, walk me through.
Dyatlov.
What is the Dyatlov Pass incident?
Well, and you can, we'll kind of go through because you know what, a lot of people don't know what this is, and it's a shame because there's a lot of stuff here. So I'd like to go through their names. But have you read the names?
Yeah,
these are deeply Russian names. So I'll do my best.
Russian names.
Igor Dyatlov. So that's what everything they call it, the Dyatlov Pass. It's based on, he was the leader.
Picture this guy. He looks 12.
Yeah, he was 23.
He looks 12.
He was 23.
I can follow him to the corner store.
And not only was he 23, like he was like a big deal. Like he, sure. He was like you had to kind of like get on his good side to be able to go to do one of these things, right? Like this was so there was 10 individuals at the beginning of this, right? So, and they went to they started, hold on a second, let me just get my notes, and that way I can basically January 23rd, 1959.
Yep.
Group of 10 hikers. They took the number 43 train to Sverdlovsky, to the city of Serov. Now,
for those who don't know, this is in Russia.
This is very much in Russia.
Very much.
Yeah. So they went to, all of these kids went, and I say kids, well, there was one that wasn't a kid. He was like 38 years old. Actually, his name was Semyon Zolotarov. Zolotarov. He was 38. So he was not a kid, but the rest of them were all like 21, 22 to 23. So they basically, they go to the Ural Polytechnical Institute. They're all students of varying levels, engineering, mechanical. It's more like a mechanical engineering kind of institute. So these are not your regular kids. These aren't a bunch of kids that are like, hey, let's go for a fucking hike and see what happens.
These aren't a bunch of high school kids.
These are not. No.
A bunch of them weren't necessarily going for a hike. Some of these people were trying to qualify for their mountaineering. Like
they were all trying to qualify. Yeah. And what it was called was expert sportsman level 3. Right. So they've already, so these guys, they're trying to basically become, like you said, like these, upper echelons of the sporting, back in 1959, hey, you could be an explorer. You could be all sorts of things. Yeah. The world was your oyster, even in Russia. However, this was not just a regular hike. It's like 150 fucking kilometers. Like it's like,
and not
now,
this.
No, this is a very crazy terrain that they're going through. So, but let's kind of get into the group. So the group consisted of 2 females, 8 males. And like I said, they were engineers, they were smart, they were, and if you, the cool thing is that they documented their own journey throughout this because it was actually a project. So they had to do a journal. Yeah. So that they kept with them, and they did a group journal, and then they did individual journals of their travels. And I got to tell you, I got lost in some of the journals. Did you read through the journals?
I did not delve too deeply into them because you go the mundanity, but then you start, you realize these are people. Like it's very easy to sit back.
Yeah.
And tell yourself, hey, these are a bunch of strangers that died. But once you start looking into, because did you go to that the Dyatlov incident site?
Yes. Yeah. I went there too. And I went through a bunch. I mean, their
they
stuff's
have all the
published.
documents there. Like there's tons of them.
Well, they're everywhere, and pictures. So not only did they record their diaries, like their diary entries, they recorded pictures. They took pictures, tons and tons of pictures of their travels. So it took them to get where they had to go, 4 days by train, by car, by truck bed to get
by dog sled.
Well, it was a horse sled, I think, or something.
Sorry, I just knew it was a sled. I assumed it was a dog sled, but it makes perfect sense.
No, it was a horse. So they had to get, because but their actual, it sounds like a huge adventure. Like, like these guys are, they're doing their hike. They're going to do their excursion, which was going to be 30 some days. Like, this is what kind of a hike. That was their intention, was that they would basically leave.
Yeah, the intention was
27.
Started January. They start January. The whole trip starts January 23rd, right where they had.
Well, that's where they get to. Yeah,
start launching, and they were expected back by the 12th of February.
Mm-hmm. Was it the 12th of February? I thought it was March. Oh no, 12th of February. That's right.
Yeah, some of them weren't found till March, but
yeah, that's right. Sorry, I'm getting confused.
Yourself.
Yeah. This story is probably. And I don't know. I went into it kind of going, oh, it's just a story of a book. It's different. It kind of grabbed me, man. Like, I can see how people get into something like this and like it becomes a fucking rabbit hole for them.
And that's the Dyatlov incident site. It is totally.
Oh man.
Like, somebody has the amount of effort somebody's committed. Documenting and collecting stuff. Kudos. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And not only that, there's, people that have written books on this. There is documentaries. It's not as widespread because it's Russia, right? If this happened in the United States, this would be a fucking major motion picture. Hands down.
Funny you mentioned that. Just to interlude, and we'll talk about this much later, or we'll forget. I noticed in previous episodes we say we'll talk about stuff later, and we talk about it.
Yeah.
Did you read about the Yuba County 5?
No.
That's the American version of the Dyatlov Pass incident.
And it was a real incident.
It's fucked up. Like, it's pretty screwed up. And we'll touch on it if we remember near the end. But
I like this shit. I like this kind of stuff because, it makes you want to. Huh? It is. And
but that's why I didn't read the diary entries, because you start humanizing them. And all of a sudden, they're no longer a bunch of strangers. You're like,
it's true. You're kind of like
you and your unrequited love for Smetla or whatever. Like they
well, there wasn't. Yeah, they're very so. Yes, and there is some
.com, folks. Total shout out to a lot of good information. If you're interested,
great information.
Look there.
There's a few sites though that are just fucking fantastic. But most of them are, so yeah, our journey, begins January 23rd, but it takes 4 days to get to where they have to go. And they're fucking like sleeping in these old abandoned cabins. They're
getting arrested for singing and
this is thing. Let's set the scene here. 1959 in Russia. So the fact that they're going to an institute for schooling means that, this is communist Russia. This is, I don't know if it'd be pre-Cold War. It's in that time period.
The Cold War started. This is not
right after World War,
right? The Cold War kind of started, and
for sure. So you've got, there's a very strong duty to, to the government, to all sorts of things. And you're right. They were actually kind of accosted by police because they were singing. And if you read their journals, which I would say if you get time, go through them. It's fucking crazy interesting how nice these people were. They
didn't deserve this.
If I'm writing if they're horrible people, you go, whatever. But
Russians.
These are their personal journals you're reading, and you go, wow, like they're fucking genuinely nice. They just want to sing and dance and fucking and be
have a good
physical.
Time. Like they're there, sort of,
if I at that age, my journals would not have been anywhere near as nice as these people.
Did you keep a journal at your age? At their age?
I did. I still journal actually for my son.
I try to do it. I'm inconsistent. I think I'm about 6 months out of date for my journaling. It's supposed to be really, really good. The Stoics recommend it. You're supposed to.
I've kept a journal since I was 16. I have several.
I'm going to read them to your son and say,
yeah, I'll give them to him eventually one day, probably when I'm old and, senile and don't care.
That's right. All the statute of limitations has exhausted.
all of them. Yes, and I can no longer go to prison. Yeah.
Like Bill, I can no longer go to prison.
Oh, Bill Cosby. Oh, fuck. Don't even get me started about that guy. God damn it. Anyway, so January 26th, I'll skip the train. Like they go by train, they do all this other
They
stuff.
go by train, by truck, and now they're on the sled.
I'm going to say the truck before the sled, and I'll tell you why.
It is the truck before the sled because January 26th, they're taking the truck.
Yeah. So, but I'll tell you why it's kind of important. Everything I read kind of points to why Uden was the guy that said, okay, and he was young. Like he was 21 years old.
This is the guy who hurt he is sciatica.
Yeah, sciatica, rheumatoid, or rheumatism, I guess it was. They called it as well. They had a bunch of different things. But so this trip, they're in the back of this fucking truck and it is like 30 below, snowing. Just a horrible experience. And yeah, they pretty much believe that truck ride was what, and then subsequently this sled ride for several miles, 20 miles into the fucking wilderness. Pretty much did him in. So,
yeah,
but he did continue. He started the journey with them, just to basically turn around. And they split up his gear and they said, okay, well, we get it. You can't make it. And he knew. And these guys I can't emphasize this enough. These are experienced people. This is not a bunch of yahoos coming.
This is not a bunch of high school students. These are people that have some degrees, varying degrees of mountaineering experience, right?
Well, they're all trying for their level 3.
I don't know if were all of them or were only a couple of them.
I don't know. That's sort of the impression I got.
People. Yeah, there were enough experienced people. Like this was not a bunch of,
even though they're young, like they've been doing this for a long time. Like in terms of long time, who knows? They could have started when they were 16 or 17, and so yeah, they were fairly experienced. And this is like they had good equipment, right for that time period. It wasn't like they had the worst equipment to use. I mean, anyway,
a good Russian made equipment. I mean, durable, maybe not the most sexiest, maybe not the most lightest.
A lot of wool. I wouldn't have lasted.
A lot of wool. Some of the suits you see them wearing in their snowsuits, and they look like the Michelin Man.
Oh God. Well, you'd have to, like, many layers. And imagine when they get wet, like they didn't have polymers. They didn't have any kind of like nylons
or anything.
No Under Armour. That's for damn sure. Sax underwear. Do yourself a favor, gentlemen. This is
the ball pouch. The ball pouch is worth it.
The sack pouch is worth it, especially if you're on a little on the heavier side, like myself. The sweating alone.
And we have one episode where we do not talk about your ball sweat.
Oh, not this one.
Not this one. Fair enough. Great. There's the explicit rating. Thanks, Phil.
Hey, you're welcome. I've already got it set to no children. You can't watch this.
I'm not doing that for the podcast, by the way. So it's either clean or explicit. So I just click clean. I figure
we're not bad. It's not.
No,
bad.
we're not. Jeez.
Have you heard, like, I'm at my campground and I'm hearing like these 10-year-olds and they're like, hey, fuck you, buddy. I'm like, God damn. Shit's changed. Anyway, so we're basically back to January 27th and they're now on their own. And then, yes, you didn't get sick. And then basically he says, okay, I can't do this. And they split up his gear.
The sled. He heads back.
Yeah. He splits up. They split up his gear because they did need his rations. Like, this is a long trip and they needed the food and all that other great stuff. So yeah. And they stay at this little cabin, I think, that's in the middle of nowhere.
It's like an abandoned mining settlement. So
yeah,
it's not like a cabin that we would think of. Hey,
oh yeah, this is
you're squatting in an abandoned mining settlement that has a building in it. That's right.
And there's pictures of them all the way through. So, that's something else, is that they're documenting their trip as they go. Says here they pitched a tent for their tent on January 28th, 10 kilometers from their starting point. So they've mucked their way through. Now you got to remember, this is snow. Like, this is winter, right? This is Russian winter.
And they never mentioned snowshoes. They mentioned skis, but they never mentioned snowshoes. So
now, with that said, these skis are kind of those wide.
Well, they're the old school ones. They're not the cool ones we've got. These are these
are wood. These are these are not fun, especially in a ski boot, at 30 below. That's not fun. We had to cross country ski. That's all we.
Gotta
That's
love
what
it,
we had to
baby.
do at our school. Yeah.
That and
So,
cross country running, the two things you could do. You have lots of woods.
Yeah, that was so much fun for a guy who couldn't run very far. Yeah. So anyway, they're doing their thing, and from their journal entries and from what I'm seeing in their pictures, they're having fun. There's pictures of them horsing around. Journal entries are like so and so is playing his mandolin, and
And let's not forget 1959, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not saying we were tougher back then, but we were tougher back then in all regards.
Oh fuck!
This is Russia, so no doubt they were even tougher.
Like, but yeah, let's clarify here. Russia went through a real bad spell from like 1905 to like 1990. I don't know.
It kept going through bad spells.
Yeah, it's just nonstop. And the government in itself, I mean, well, the Soviet Union collapses. There's a lot. So then these become independent countries. And,
well, that didn't happen until much later.
No. But I'm saying like these are the strifes that you're seeing like this. Yeah. But all of that led up to this, right? Like to the collapse of the Soviet Union. This nonstop, like communism as a whole, just didn't work, right? So anyway, aside from that, we kind of skipped through. They're basically climbing this terrain. What was the name of the Kholat? I can't say it.
Kholat Sahel or SYAKHL, the northern slope. Just like
it's heading towards a mountain. I mean, basically,
they've created caches at this point too. So another important thing to call out is
before they get they had to do a cache. Actually, I don't know what day that was that they did the cache. I think it was the 29th.
They make the cache on the 1st to just before they start climbing Kholat. They make it to lighten their backpacks. They create the cache
for the supplies.
Yeah.
Okay, because they left a few other things
back through, right? So the idea is they're going to come around and then come back.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not exiting out at another point. The idea is they're going to do a circular route, I think, to come back.
Yeah. See, I have it here as the 31st was when they cached their surplus food and equipment.
I have on the 31st that they tried to ascend the shortest way.
Well, and they got lost, right?
Yeah, and then they go back to spend the night on the banks of the Asupa.
Right? Yeah, that's the 31st.
That's what I have but again, I'm relying heavily on the Dyatlov site because they done a really, 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 really thorough job. Just the amount of artifacts. I tell you, folks, if you are at all interested in this, go to datlovpass.com.
We're promoting the shit out of this website.
Well, you're finding it elsewhere. I've looked for other articles and I'm like, all the other articles are kind of puff pieces, but this one is hardcore.
Yeah. Well, from what I read, and maybe I misunderstood. I don't know. It's possible. The 31st is sort of the last hurrah. That's the last day that they stop writing in their journals.
Okay. I didn't know that. I didn't know.
Yeah.
No, the second is really bad, but
the
31st. Yeah. The second from the timeline from the site is all members of the group die in a mysterious way. So I'm assuming they stopped.
That would be like February the 1st. Yeah.
Sorry, what did I say?
You said the 1st or the 2nd. And I'm like, no, the last entries are the 31st of January.
Okay. I've got mine says February 2nd was when they all die.
They may indeed have. I don't know. I'm not seeing anything here for that.
Oh yeah.
31st. The 31st is from what I'm seeing.
That's the last entries.
We don't know exactly but what happened was they climbed this slope. Now they went to the tree line first, right? Remember? So there's basically what I'll kind of set it up for you. You have a large slope. It's going to be a rough climb, and they know that. Basically, the weather has changed for the worst. It's not great weather. They've cached some stuff beforehand, like you had said. I'm not exactly sure if it was the 31st or if it was a little bit sooner. But for all intents and purposes, they've decided to kind of carry on up the slope. And this is Dyatlov. I mean, Igor, he's the guy that's leading this. Like this is not a negotiation either. I think that, they're comrades, they're friends. But at the same token, This is not
it's not democracy. This is not let's tell him what to do.
No, he is the boss. Not to put it all on him, but the buck stops with him, right? So actually it says the next day. So maybe it is the first. The next day the hikers started to move through the pass. Now as they make it up, the weather once again changes and they're found on the slope. And instead of going back, there's one of two things. It's either that he wanted to not lose ground. It's only a mile to the tree line.
It's about a kilometer to get to the tree line. It would have been the ideal spot
to the forest to find, because they had no wood.
It took them forever to just do that.
Well, that's it. You're coming down
in that day, right? That's half a day back, apparently.
In deep snow, right?
Yep.
And it's snowing more. So that's, I think, and the other thing was either that he decided, or he decided that, hey, never stayed on a slope before. Okay. This could be something new to try. And this is where your avalanche thing comes into play.
So this how they dug in. A lot of people go off and say an experienced person wouldn't do this, right?
Yeah, sort of.
They're saying it's a bit of a rookie mistake to make. Or it's a slope.
Yes. It's a desperation move. Right. Like it's something, but now when they found so anyway, we'll kind of,
we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. I don't want to get too far ahead, but so that was the decision. So you have this group of people, they're getting tired, and through the journal entries, if you read them, they're like, oh, we're slowing down. We're not getting up as early. I think the basic things that you would feel doing something like this, you're hiking through the cold and the snow and the elements, and
it started to become less fun at one point.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if this was a great idea. Maybe what do you do?
Maybe Yuri had the right idea. My sciatica's acting up now. Can we go back?
Yeah, this is a round tripper. So but they stay really positive. Like even all the journal entries, they stay super positive. And then obviously the end is terrible. I saw something floating by me.
I did, yeah.
Did you see it?
I did. I thought it was maybe a floater in my eye, but no, it's
some fluff.
It's ghosts.
Oh, maybe. Who knows? But yeah, so they make it to this point, and this is where they are found several days later, when they do not, basically
by several days, you mean like
February? Well, I think it was
like 20 days later.
Yeah, well, so when Yuri Yudin was going back, he did have a discussion with Igor, apparently, that they were going to be a little later than he had anticipated. I think they expected February the 12th.
The 12th was the date they were expected back.
Yeah, but he had told him, he said, don't panic if we're a few days late or whatever, right? So, but they were more than that. And I think what happened was it was February 26th. The friends and family of these kids basically went, what the fuck is going on? And
21st is apparently when search parties were dispatched. But like you saw from the start, it took several days for them to get there.
And they didn't know, and they also deviated from the trail a little bit.
About 500 meters. I think it was like half a kilometer, which might not seem like a lot, but
it's in a big wasteland of
nothingness that is death. It's a bit of a thing.
Yeah. So so basically the crime scene is well, I call it a crime scene, but it may not be. Who knows? February 26th, they found the group's abandoned and badly damaged tent on the Kolatsayak slope, basically. So yeah, the tent is the first thing they find is the tent. And a lot of gear is still in the tent. All their shit is there. And they cut their way out of the tent, it appears.
Yep.
Instead of using the ends of the zippers or whatever. So
the entrance didn't appear blocked off.
No.
I don't remember. So it was weird that the entrance didn't, but yet they cut their ways out of it.
Yeah. It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. They say that it was cut from the inside. I'm not sure exactly how you determine cut from the inside, cut from the outside, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. But that was the one thing that the reporting search and rescue, whoever it was, I don't know if it was the military or not. Basically,
all I got is Slobstov and I'm naming names. Sharvin. They found the tents, whoever the hell they are.
I don't know. It must have. I have no idea.
Heroes of the Republic, no doubt.
Heroes, yeah. So they're somebody. So there were 9 sets of footprints around the area. Now, this was another thing that kind of we know that this area is having weather. This area, geographically speaking, is very close in terms of what we have as winter here. This is not anything 30 below weather, 30 below Celsius here is a pretty typical early February thing, right? With lots of snow.
Be out in it, but
no.
If you're properly prepared, which these people would have been,
they would have been
survivable.
Of course, and they were ready to do this. But I mean, I meant more like the time frame. So if we can assume that their journal entries stopped at a certain point, the pictures stop at a certain point, that they're dead. I mean, that's sort of my go-to. So you've got like 20 some days of weather. And what they're determining at the crime scene is that there are 9 sets of footprints. Some barefoot, some in socks, they say, and some with boots. I don't know about you, but I've spent a lot of time around snow. I do know about you. You have also spent a lot of time around snow.
Yes.
And I'll tell you right now, if you get one snowfall over a set of prints,
it's all gone.
It's fucking gone.
It doesn't even need to be snowfall. Blowing
snow melt, will do it. Or even a melt.
Melt, blowing snow, sun.
Yeah. So for me to believe, it just starts to kind of shout to me that, okay, 9, you could tell there were 9 individual footprints in this campsite that were leading away, like in varying positions. And you could tell that from this discovery. I have a hard time believing that.
The only way I could think about it was they either found something that they were like, they cleared some, oh, look, we found footprints under this freshly blown snow, or found something like frozen prints. If I'm running a Fair Fate, for example, I'm going to be melting stuff into the ice. So, but even then, if it snowed at all, why you wouldn't? Yeah,
which it would. It's February.
It's February. You're on the mountains. There's wind. Yeah. Again, there's so many reasons why. Like, unless you're, I don't know, homes, you're not picking up these footprints.
So apparently, they could be followed down the hill, the footprints. Once again, you're on a hill. Like, you know what happens with snow on hills? Like, it just fucking blows, and it's, you get that downward draft from the mountain. Like, it's going to be anyway. But leads them to the nearby wood, which is the Russian pine. That's what I've read about, the Russian pine over and over again. And they find the first 2 bodies of our heroes, and that is Krivonodachenko and Doroshenko. These are the 2 individuals, and they're the ones that are found shoeless, dressed in only in their underwear. And basically they find them at the foot of this really large, like, pine tree.
And it's a cedar tree. And what
is it, a cedar or is it a pine?
I've got my notes say cedar again, and there are branches broken off. It looks like they've tried to break branches off or
climb it. And they also found trace amounts of skin on the tree, like from their hands. And it appeared that there was a small fire that was tried. They tried to make a small fire, and one of their hands was badly burnt. Like one of the 2, their hands were burnt.
There's a lot of burns, and a lot of that was okay. So one of the things is an awful lot of people have burns in this.
Yeah, and other injuries that are very difficult to explain. So these are the 2 that are found, and then they go, oh, what the fuck? It says it is pine from what I'm seeing. Cedar, I haven't seen. Not that it matters, but it's a tree.
It's a tree.
Yeah, but I took my sources from a lot of different places. So I didn't realize
museumcenter.org. This one I'm referencing about the
I read that. Yeah. I read some of that stuff too, but at any rate, it was a tree, and they were found at the base of this tree, and this is on the edge of the forest. One thing I'd like to mention, basically, was the last entry that I can't remember which one it was. One of the girls had wrote, and I'll just kind of read it to you quick. It's interesting because I don't want to forget it, and that's why I want to read it. So sure. The weather today is a bit worse. Wind in the west, snowing, probably from the pines. So she mentions the pines too. Since the sky is perfectly clear. So she thinks that it's blowing because, like blowing off the trees. Another reason why footprints wouldn't fucking be there. But started relatively early, around 10 a.m., got back on the Mansi Trail. Now, the Mansi is a local indigenous peoples.
I don't know if we can call them indigenous, but they're tribesmen, basically.
Well, they're indigenous to the area. They're
the Ural Mountains.
Yeah, they're the local indigenous folks. Up to now, we are following a Mansi Trail, on which not so long passed a hunter with a deer. Yesterday, it seemed we stumbled upon his resting spot. The deer didn't go any further. So I guess they left the carcass of the deer. The hunter took the beaten trail by himself, and we followed in his footsteps. I thought that was really interesting, for what it's worth, that they actually followed this guy. Now, this is an area where these people hunt, and this is a really well-known area for caribou and things like that. Right. So
it's totally their stomping grounds. So the man,
it is, they have trails. Grounds. This is they trap and they hunt and they live off the land at this point in 1959. And I just wanted to mention that because they keep saying, well, there's no other people around. There's no other. And I don't think that was true. No, I'm not saying that the Mansi, they were peaceful people. There's no signs of altercation where they're.
Well, see, now we're getting into theories about it's when we start getting the actual investigation, right? So,
yeah, but let's just first get through the what we know is fact, or what they, which also bothers me because then they say these things about footprints, and I go, fuck, then look, there's something wrong with that. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Anyway, so it says that the branches on the tree. So we're back at the pine or cedar, whatever you want.
Whatever.
We're broken up to 5 meters high. It suggests that one of the skiers had climbed up to look at something, perhaps the camp. So,
because they had left. So one of the things is they had left a flashlight on top of one of the tents to act as a beacon to find.
I didn't read that.
Tents. Oh yeah. So apparently there was one of the flashlights was left on top of one of the tents on as a beacon, so that they could get their way back to this.
So even more weird. And this is why nothing seems to make any sense to me about this, like in the ability to explain it away as something simple. So anyway, those bodies are found between the pines and the camp. So we're talking about on the slope. They find 3 more bodies.
Yeah, they find Dyatlov, Morga, and Slobodin,
yeah. They died in poses that were attempting to get back to the tent. Yep. So they died in that direction, all 3 of them, in varying distances from the camp. So they weren't all together. They were kind of like, and they suggest, and I have a list here of, they died of hypothermia, I'm pretty sure. Those 3.
The only one, well, okay, so Slobodin had a hypothermia, but had a fractured skull. And
Slobodin, the fractured skull?
Yeah, a fractured skull and multiple areas of edema and abrasions on his face and arms.
Okay. Because 3 of them had, their cause of death was...
massive chest fractures?
Yeah, massive wounds, like internal, nothing on the outside. And the other ones were hypothermia. That was kind of the official report that was released in the 2019 again. So yeah, then you have, which is kind of weird. Like they're like frozen in this, like they were running from something or clawing their way back to whatever. Then Finding the remaining 4 travelers took more than 2 months, which was weird.
because so their situation is a little weird, right? The
Very
remaining
weird.
4 were found. Apparently, they went to a ravine and huddled in a snow shelter
under 4 fucking meters of snow,
which then collapsed on them. And one of them was actually, from what the report said, is they were crawling into it at the time.
Yeah, and now they were wearing. So this is another weird thing, is that they had on clothes that didn't belong to them, as if they had taken the clothes from maybe the bodies or what have you.
Yeah. So if you go to, let's see here, 1 second. Let me just see here. So I'll give you some of the highlights from the. Okay, so Dyatlov, for example, was very lightly dressed, no shoes. He was wearing a knitted vest, but Yudin had said that belonged to Kolotov.
Yeah, they did have a guy that was like, "Hey, I fucking saw him wear that sweater."
That's right, and it was somebody else. Like, so a couple different ones, right? Like,
yeah. So no question. What makes me question is that these are experienced people, and like anyway, let's just state the fact. This story has fucked me up a little bit. I don't know. There's a lot of ins and outs. Just makes me want to read more. I don't know. So they find the last 3 bodies. Now they're about 250 feet into the pine area. So they're in a fair distance through the trees, right? So this is another reason why I didn't think it's an avalanche, but whatever. That's a long ways to go through trees without hitting any. I'm just saying. You have to agree. That's
there's
crazy.
A lot of
distance.
Weirdness, but again, from the stuff I was reading about the slab avalanche stuff.
I did read a lot about that as well,
and it's again.
Yeah. So it says here 3 of the 4 were better dressed than the others, and there were signs that some clothing of those who had died first had been removed for use with others.
Which kind of implies that they did not necessarily all die.
Well, they certainly didn't die all at the same time.
All at the same time. They did not die all at the same time.
No.
They did not die necessarily one right after another. There was some time to go off and try and live.
Yeah. And there's no, what are you going to do? Right. But it didn't seem like it's almost like they were disorientated or something, like you have equipment that was left there that they didn't utilize.
Yep.
Clothing. There was a lot of things going on. So that's the other part that's, kind of disturbing to me. So some of the body damage that we can talk about. The Soviet authorities determined that 6 had died from hypothermia, while the other 3 had been killed by physical trauma.
Yeah. So the big one that I was hearing was major chest fractures, akin to being hit by a car.
Yeah. Or pressure.
And skull.
One skull. Fractures. Yeah. One small crack in the skull for one of them.
One guy had exposed skull bones. Now, again, let's bear in mind, they found the bodies later, so it could have totally been exposed by somebody else, by something having
chewing.
A snack, but
perhaps, I don't know. It says 4 of the bodies were found lying in running water in a creek, and 3 of these had soft tissue damage in the head and face. 2 of the bodies were missing their eyes.
Yep.
One was missing its tongue and one was missing its eyebrows. It concluded in their investigation, compelling natural force. I don't know what that means.
I like that term, compelling natural force.
Had caused the deaths. Now, with that said, the soft parts of a body tend to be the place where small animals do tend to,
Or so the ravine where you said, because it's a bit of a river ravine.
There's a small creek. Yeah. I mean, fish, I don't know. But small, like if you're around wooded areas that are with creeks, you could have mink, weasels, small creatures with a very sharp.
I don't know if foxes are native to that area, but they would have totally.
Fox is a lot like a dog, though. I mean, it would have probably gnawed on them. I would think, took a piece, took a chunk, shakes its head.
What about birds?
I think birds for sure. Crows would go peck your eyes out
like nobody.
Yeah. Now, crows and ravens may even pick at your, but you may see signs of that. Do you know what I mean? Like, pecking is and that's why I wish that I think this was just such a half-assed attempt at
the investigation was
pinning this together.
Mishandled. It was mishandled. You read everything about it. It was just completely and utterly mishandled.
Like my guess is that, you're getting most of this information from the search team, which is not a forensics team, right? And they're not able to kind of, they're moving the bodies, they're doing all sorts of shit, and they're making a mess out of everything. Is my guess.
That's right. This is a search. They see this as the rescue team would see it as a search and rescue operation, not as a potentially active crime scene. Which
I mean, for myself, it's just strange in how the bodies are and how far apart they are from one another. And then, then you have these four, like you say, that are just like they're way in the bush now. They're under 4 meters, and 4 meters, folks, if you're American, that would be equivalent to about 12 or 13 feet.
So that's like climbing into a snow cave, realizing it's not a cave and it's literally just a pile of snow with a hole in it.
Yeah, it's deep.
We used to stay in Quincy's, remember? And I think as kids, I'm sure you did it at the wrecking yard where we would burrow through the snowbanks.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's not unreasonable to think that, but if they had the ability to do that, my question is,
gotten back to the camp, which was literally
where there was a stove and a repairable tent.
What? Is it 500 meters? What distance were they from the?
They were about 1 kilometer, 1 point something from the tree line to the where their tent was about 1 kilometer. Which is not that far.
Well,
it's far, but they could see it. It was almost a line of sight, right? So, if you think about 1 kilometer, it's 1,000 meters, right? Dyatlov was right. He was like the closest. He was like 500 meters from, he was halfway there. And those guys.
So the order I've got for Dyatlov, Slobodan, and Komagovanova, we're heading towards the camp.
Back up the hill.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like, so were they all together? And then all of a sudden they said, okay, we need to go get supplies. And those guys fucking died. And then, who knows? I don't know what made them leave the camp. Was it, we'll get into that.
Yeah. The cool stuff. That's where the cool stuff comes in.
Cool and kind of fucking frustrating and sad because, anyway, the official conclusion by Russian authorities, they reopened the incident in 2019, and its conclusions were presented in 2020, July, that an avalanche had led to the deaths. That's all they say. Survivors of the avalanche had been forced to suddenly leave their camp in low visibility conditions. I would suspect, let me read on. I don't want to be such an asshole that with inadequate clothing and had died of hypothermia. That explains 6 of them, but not all of them. Avalanches would tend to take the tent. This is one of the arguments about the slope. I mean,
the whole slab avalanche thing that
would take.
Were not covered. The tents were not knocked down. The tents were not covered.
Yes.
So
or moved
something or moved.
They were still had the anchors in the ground. So
if you were in a tent and a slab avalanche, which folks, so let's talk about the slab avalanche, which is apparently,
and I'll show a picture of what it, because I read a lot about it too, and it makes, if the bodies were all together, it makes the most amount of sense, right? Like, I'm in a tent laying beside you, and there is an avalanche. We're going, and people survive avalanches, right? This is the real thing. You can survive, but typically you'll all be swept away in a similar fashion.
So here is the based on the results and contemporary documents by Russian investigators, the research team suggests the following reconstruction of the incident. Okay, so here, put your reading time, folks. On the evening of February 1st, the sleeping hikers suddenly awakened, surprised by a slab of snow crushing down on the part of the tent facing the slope. 3 are partially buried, sustaining severe yet not immediately fatal injuries. Panicking, one of the hikers cut the tent open with a knife, sending the shoeless and undressed group into the pitch black and freezing night with temperatures below minus 23 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not sure what that is Celsius, but it's probably cool.
I think they equal out to 20 below.
Yeah, once you go below 0, because it's like,
they start to
30 and divide by 2 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
All 9 flee for almost 1 kilometer. about 2 miles, which is so not even remotely that's a kilometer shorter than a mile.
With no clothes on.
Yeah. Poorly dressed, shoeless and undressed.
Yeah.
Down the slope into the nearby woods. At the cedar tree, 2 hikers start a fire, realizing the fading flame will not keep the group alive the entire night. 3 hikers, despite the risk of further avalanches, try to find their way back to the tent to get supplies and warm clothing, but are disoriented by the low visibility and end up dying on the slope. 4 of them, venturing deeper into the woods, try to find shelter in a snow cave, but to the injured to continue, finally succumb to their internal injuries. And then the thing crushes them. Yeah. So this is the idea that the slab came down, hit the tent, and all of a sudden
they just panic and run kilometer in deep
somebody
snow.
Was buried. And if you look at the picture of the tent, I agree with you. You look at the picture of the tent, it does not look like that tent was. Now maybe it's much bigger because
the poles are still. Now it held all of them, so you know that it's a fairly large tent.
Yeah.
My problem is that in the pictures of where there is no sign of any kind of snow. Like when you have a release of any kind of avalanche. And so the experts, when I was watching this, it's an American who did it and he does a documentary. I watched his like YouTube. I'll post his name. He doesn't believe that that's the case. He goes, the weather was cold. Avalanches tend to be more of a mild weather issue. Right. Okay. So that's almost all avalanches is what happens is everything's frozen. It's solid and it's tight. And it was 30 below this evening.
This isn't an avalanche prone either. Like this is not.
No, this is not an avalanche. This is like in our neck of the woods. When was the last time you heard a fucking avalanche around here? I mean, it's possible, but it's not plausible.
Avalanche, does that count?
What's that?
Colorado avalanche.
Well, it's a fucking mountain. Yeah, of course.
No, the hockey team, the Colorado.
Yeah.
It is a Colorado.
Oh, I thought you meant in Colorado. Yeah, of course there's avalanches. But yeah, like in our neck of the woods, you're not so much because the grade of this is not. They're not on like Mount Everest. Like
not very steep. It's
not that steep.
Like it's still a slope, but it's not.
And even if it was, let's say it was an avalanche, why would you run away from it? You're experienced enough to know that if that avalanche went, there's very unlikely chance that you're going to have a secondary, on a slope this magnitude, right? All of you are going to run. Why wouldn't you grab your shit? Why?
Why
wouldn't you
panic and do dumb things?
At 30 below, as well as I do. If you're in cold weather, what your first thought is, fuck, I need my gear. That's it.
Putting on boots.
At least, because you're dead. These are not strangers to cold environments.
They're not inexperienced. So if this was a bunch of cheese eating high school kids, I would say, hey,
it's possible. No, I would agree.
Like these are not. These are not unexperienced individuals, and the fact that all of them.
Mm-hmm. Now, and not only that, they're in good shape. They're in their own rights. They're athletes in some respect.
Sure.
I mean, they're doing something like this to begin with through difficult weather, and I mean that says a testament to who they are to begin with. So, do you want me to recap here, just kind of where we're at, and then we can get into kind of the theories.
Yes, because basically because we've determined from the 2 investigations, it was an avalanche that killed them.
I mean, that's the determination. Case closed. The first time. Before the files were locked away. And I think that's important to mention. This is Russia, though. Everything is locked away in the Kremlin. Doesn't matter what it is. Nothing's public record for a bazillion years. You basically have, this Jesus, there is something.
Yeah, I don't. What did an animal fall into a fan or something?
There is no fan. And I saw it in the camera, but I did not see it come by me. It's a little weird.
The next episode. Ordered chaos. Stuff that flies around in Phil's house.
Well, I do have pets, so there's a very good chance that it's hair. Where was I with this? Oh, yeah. So the first time, there was no mention of avalanche. There was no mention of anything. I would think that if there was an avalanche, the first time around, they would have said, fuck, it looks like an avalanche here, boys. No? Okay. But that wasn't the case. That didn't happen. That became to 2019 some 40 years later, 60 years later, 60 years later.
So 59 to 2019. Yeah, 60 years.
Yeah. So 60 years later, you're telling me it's an avalanche. Okay.
Apparently they figured it out from an algorithm used in Frozen.
I know. I fucking watched it too. And I'm like,
okay. Because they got the script so perfectly. All right.
All right. Whatever. I mean,
sounds good. The Disney figured it out. Problems. Case closed.
Case closed. That doesn't explain a whole lot, but whatever. So, and we'll get into that because the weird shit's coming up. This is all just the basic stuff. So 6 of the group members died of hypothermia, 3 of fatal injuries. There were no indication of other people nearby because, there was 9 footprints. And anyway. So the tent had been ripped open from within. Victims had died 6 to 8 hours after their last meal. That was determined through the investigation. Traces from the camp show that all group members left the campsite of their own accord on foot. Of course, if you could tell that 20. So, but that's what they were saying. And this is the original report.
The original investigation.
That they left the campsite on foot. There were footprints around. How can you have an avalanche and still see footprints? That's the other big question.
Well, and again, like we said, 20 some odd days before the search team shows up.
Yeah.
Like this isn't like they showed up the next day saying, oh, look, there's a bunch of footprints around.
That's what I'm saying. It's weird. I know. To dispel the theory of an attack by the indigenous Mansi people.
Mansi, they got some Mansi in there to say, did you do it?
Yeah. Stated that the fatal injuries of the 3 bodies could not have been caused by human beings. So that was the first thing they said. That
because there was
2
injuries
with no external injuries.
No, there's no external bruising on it.
That's right.
It's internal. They likened it to a car crash. They likened it something to a car crash. The amount of kinetic energy transfer you'd see in a car crash.
So all the released documentation contained no information about the condition of the skier's internal organs. So upon autopsy, all that information has disappeared. Doesn't exist. And obviously there were no survivors.
Apparently they were very orange. That's what I'd heard. They were
all very orange.
They talked about I think discoloration of hair.
And the hair was gray. Yeah, graying of the hair, which is, sometimes a radiation, I guess, but it's also common in bodies that are in the cold.
It's
I read
composition in cold climates. Like
and it affects different people differently. I don't know, different people differently, I want to sound all smart and stuff. So let's go through some of the theories of what happened. And basically, if you want to start, kick us off. What do you want to talk about first?
Okay, so I'm not. So one of the theories about what happened, and I'm not going to go with the one I know you want to hit because you want to hit that one hard. I'm going to talk about infrasound.
I like that one. I don't understand it, but I like it, and that's actually the guy that did the Netflix. There's a video on Netflix. What was his name? I have it somewhere. Anyway, he believed that was the actual Donnie Eichers from 2013. His name is Donnie.
Eichers sound familiar.
Eichers, Eichar.
Does he sound familiar?
His book, The Dead Mountain. He did a ton of research and he walked this fucking thing. He went up and he did this trail. I'm like, I don't know about you, man. I don't think this is a good idea. Like 9 people died of fucking craziness. So
maybe he did it during the summer. Who knows?
But he is a very legit dude, though. So I think you're onto something here.
Well, the infrasound one is cool. So the infrasound is that the wind going around Kolat created a vortex street, which can produce infrasound capable of inducing panic attacks in humans.
Right.
So this is called the fear frequency. Infrasound is any sound below 20 hertz.
Oh, yeah.
You can't perceive it. But just because we don't consciously hear it doesn't mean we don't respond to it.
Really?
So this is what infrasound is.
Okay.
And in certain individuals, low frequency sound can induce feelings of fear or dread or even depression. So the cool thing about this is they link infrasound to ghost sightings. So sites with a low umber. But in this case, the theory is this infrasound, the wind created this infrasound. So they wouldn't even know they were hearing it. So it's not like they said, I heard a scary sound.
Right.
They
right.
just know they were overwhelmed with
anxiety
and dread.
And you know what? That's a very real thing, like panic attacks and things like that. And anyone listening, I mean, if you do have them,
you know exactly. You're not putting.
You're living whatever.
In the woods.
What's that?
Out in the woods, you're not putting your pants on.
I mean, right. And I know people personally who caught them. I've never had one per se. I mean, myself, I don't know, but I know what I've seen.
That brief feeling of fear when there's no toilet. When I'm sitting there and there's no toilet paper, I'm like,
oh God, oh, not the sink again.
And I'm cursing my wife, saying, "Damn you!" And I'll see the empty roll. I'm like, I didn't empty the roll.
I'm using the roll again.
Using the toilet brush.
Using the brush, the sink, little
Same
splash,
place.
splash. But yeah, no, like, but I have seen it where people have really shut down and thought they were having a heart attack, and it was
this
stress.
kind of explains some of it, right? So this is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
We'll touch on some of the other weirdness, but this explains in some senses why it seems like these experienced hikers engaged in somewhat irrational behavior.
It does.
Definitely a fear-based behavior, what they did.
I want to read his book because it's really kind of touted as, I know this website was pretty good, and I didn't use it as gospel. I tried to do a lot of different sites, and there is sites out there.
Yeah, but the bulk one is that Dyatlov Pass, like I really can't plug that enough because they have really, and I think one of the guys involved in it recently died.
Yeah, and
a memorandum on the front page. So folks, go to that site and
check it out. I did go to it, but there is conflicting information, of course, and
sure there is, because they've collected everything, right? They didn't come out. So what they tried to do with that site is they tried to collect everything, and they touch it on the infrasound. But the infrasound fear frequency one, where did I grab this article from? I grabbed it from Strange Dimensions, and I've also grabbed one from Wikipedia, Forbes. Like, there's a bunch of stuff about this theory.
Yeah, and I read about it too. But where it comes from is not where it comes from, but like the theory that this fellow has is that there is some sort of paranoia that went on. Now, there's also something that floats around that there is a picture of, they saw something. Was it a Mansi hunter?
Is this the?
They think it's a yeti, but it doesn't look like a yeti to me. It doesn't look like a
dude in one of those old snowshoes.
Yeah, like it kind of looks like a dude, but there's no doubt that picture is legit. Yeah, like it's a legit picture. And they did talk about it, I think, in one. I didn't read the journal entry. There's so many. I didn't have time to sift through all of the entries to find it, but I did find that they did talk about how, I think that snowmen are real now, or something to that effect. But what I don't know if that there's a lot of things that freak you out when you're in the middle of nowhere, even in a big group, right? A lot of panic, and it makes a lot of sense, this infrasound. It just, the more I think about it. Okay, well, I'll do the next one.
There's mine. I went with the infrasound one. So,
well, there's a few, so we can kind of, mine, the one that I like, that I believe is makes the most sense to me. If there was, and even then, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because it would have to be a government cover-up, which we know government.
This is Russia.
Well, this is Russia. And I mean, so the Soviet parachute mine exercises. Now, this area was basically a testing site for a lot of different things, including some nuclear weapon testing at some point. I don't believe there was any nuclear testing, but what a parachute mine is a mine that explodes. It's basically dropped out of a bomber, and a big parachute opens, hence parachute bomb or mine, and then it explodes in the air, causing a concussion.
Yeah, which like a concussive wave. And
it's
not shrapnel; it's concussion.
It's concussion, and they're big, and they're designed to go over battlefields and make a mess of things, right? And it would cause very similar wounds, and panic.
Yeah, the panic.
The panic is important. Yeah,
the panic is important. These people were clearly not thinking when they cut themselves out of their tent and ran, unclothed or improperly clothed into the.
and not only that, if they were doing an exercise, and I'm not saying this is like, they even knew that why would the military even know they're there? But doing an exercise, they're not dropping one, right?
No.
They're going to drop several. And if they do that, this could be them like, holy fuck, we got to get out of here. And then some of them, they could have been, the slower of the individuals could have been damaged from, the concussion of the force of the bomb.
Is they panicked, got out of the tent, and while they were trying to get away, others were blowing up, going off.
Yeah, and obviously they made it so far, and now you're freezing to fucking death. I mean, 30 below. You panicked, you ran, you did what you thought, your adrenaline's pumping, and then all of a sudden now you're frozen. You're cold. Adrenaline's done. I like it because it makes the most sense to me in terms of like, if there was one thing that could have happened, if these are experienced people, even if they were an avalanche, I'm sure they would have dug their way out. I'm sure they would have done something. They had to be incoherent in some way, shape, or form.
There was a panic that set in.
Yeah.
Messed up, either the altered state of consciousness. Maybe they were just sleep fucked. They woke up and are like, but I don't know about you. If I'm running out, I'd like to think I would have the sense to.
Yeah, but you've heard fireworks. You've heard fireworks close, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now multiply that by like 20, because that's what the sound of one of these fucking things is going to be. And it's going to fucking, and these are multiple fucking things going off in the middle of the peace and quiet of your, your surroundings. I could only see that as being, it just one of the theories anyway. There was also reports from other hikers. So this is important, and people claim this is aliens or what have you. But it coincides with reports of sightings of glowing orange orbs floating or falling in the sky in the general vicinity.
Yeah,
these are the planes.
Because
because they use a beacon. So when these things blow up. So this is and that was proven that they believe that it could have been potentially military aircraft. Makes sense. Dropping the bomb. It's got one of those fucking little flashies on it. It can be seen from a lot of different places. My only problem with that is, wouldn't they have heard? If they can see it, would they have not heard it?
So if they saw it, they should have heard explosions, because
right, especially multiple explosions. So there's flaws in everything, and I like to be honest with myself when I'm doing these kinds of things.
And there are a few military testing ones, right? There was one recently where they were talking about a blogger was going on about this, basically that it was a missile strike.
Right.
So, except that said a small yield missile that hit the side of the rock, and he said there's a fused crater. So we talk small yield. That, my friends, means atomic. That's not necessarily right. Like they saying that there was an atomic missile or nuclear missile, I guess. Detonated within, what is it? Situated about 3 kilometers from the site of their tent.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So there is a crater?
That's what it says. You can see, he says from his online, I didn't look into it.
So my only problem with that is that, so there was written of the two of the 4 that were found in the collapsed cave had radioactivity on their clothing.
This is the one thing that is really hard to explain for everything, whether it's a slab avalanche, whether it's the military testing.
Yeah. The radioactivity.
Why were 2 of them radioactive?
Here's an even better question. Why are you checking for radiation?
Why are you bringing a Geiger? Because they had a
Geiger
Soviet
counter
officer with a Geiger counter with them.
Yeah, there's a picture of that.
Yeah.
So tell me why you would bring.
And they had a what was it? Basically, their secret police, which again.
Well, I mean, that could be anything. You got a bunch of people dead. They're who knows? But tell me why you bring that on an excursion to find a bunch of hiking kids.
Yeah.
Now that tells me that there's something else that's deeper. And I think this tells a lot of people this stuff. You kind of go, okay, this doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, what exactly?
2 of them are radioactive. So this is where everybody says, well, wait a second. If there was something
Mm-hmm. If it was a nuclear strike, they'd all be ready.
They'd all glow in the dark.
They would all glow in the dark, but only two. And I mean,
beta particles was on their clothing, which the two things I've heard, one that one of these students was like a physics major and they use beta particles to determine the width of depth of net.
Yeah, one of them worked for or I don't know if he worked or did a placement. We'll have to find out. But did something with one of the nuclear facilities. So these were engineers, right? So and they were learning like to be engineers in these kind of facilities. So who knows? Maybe he worked there. Maybe they had it beforehand. But he wasn't wearing his clothes.
To do excursions to areas you're not supposed to go to. So the other one would go to areas that they're not supposed to. Again, who knows?
I bring a Geiger counter, right? Why do that? It's like bringing a hand grenade to a barbecue. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Doesn't make a lot of sense. Exactly.
Right. So
unless you're expecting to use this thing, like, why are you testing for radioactivity?
Mm-hmm. And this is Russia. Like, look at Chernobyl. I hate to say, they fucking kept that under wraps for like what, a month, 2 months.
They tried to keep it hidden, and so they kept trying to keep everything hidden. So the secrecy with Russia. What's the one I got here? I got this article linking to the secrecy aspect. Let me see.
Well, they don't want anything as an embarrassment.
Radiological weapons being used in the area, which again, because the Geiger counter thing, right?
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense if you're.
I know what they're doing.
They know that these are just kids. I mean, for the most part, but they're kids, or are they? Dun, dun, dun.
Well, so one of the theories, it sort of links back to the military testing, not so much a testing of a weapon, that the students came across military doing testing, and the military silenced them.
Yeah.
And all the evidence basically got corrupted at that point, and now case closed.
Well, and it would be very easy for the military to do something like that. And then you got to remember too, in this time period, these are hard fucking people. We've talked about that before. Yep. Like, Russians are tough fucking people. They had to be, to survive, but at the end of the day, I don't know. It'd be tough for me to swallow that a military would do that to a bunch of.
I don't think they would. I think they would.
I think it'd be tough.
They would trump them up. They would trump them up on treason. Like, they would throw them in jail.
Well, I don't even think they'd have to. I think you would have a couple KGB guys go, you did not see anything here, right? Want to spend the rest of your life in the Gustavo? No, you don't want to go to
the worst Russian impression. I am called
Soviet Union.
Soviet Union. Not Russian, it's Soviets.
You'll spend all your time. Anyway, but like, they didn't need to kill them, and I'm sure they didn't. I mean,
I don't think
we all want to hate the fucking Russians, but I'll tell you right now, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me.
So let's touch on some of the really crazy ones. So I want to do Yeti.
The Yeti, yes.
Right. So
I love the Yeti, but
basically, the evil snowbound Sasquatch. Right. They say, hey, the injuries the guy suffered on the ones that suffered on the chest, no human could have done that. But if you get a bear hug by a Yeti or smoked by a Yeti, it would have the strength to do it. And that picture of the dude in the snowsuit, which I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Like, it's a snowsuit.
It's taken from a distance.
Yeah.
What I think, it looks to me like a guy in a fur, like a fur jacket. Like, if you were the Mansi, these are people that would be using fur as
true.
As like coyote fur, or if you even look at Inuit apparel, they're one piece, typically no seams, because you don't want to have a jacket that buttons up. It's warmer if there's no seams and shit. That's kind of what it looks like. And they were talking in the journal about following this hunter. Like, they were following his tracks through the trail. He was dragging a fucking deer behind him. Maybe he got, wise to them and was like, what the fuck? We know that military, You know how we treat our indigenous people here in this fucking country.
Yeah.
I mean, these people are no different. These guys are like, oh shit, bunch of whiteys are coming. Get the fuck out of here, you know? And maybe they did catch a picture of them. He doesn't know who they are. He doesn't know if they're military. They're kind of wearing military type style clothing, you know.
They're not Mancy. The key thing is they're not Mancy.
They're not Mancy.
There's a bunch of people walking around my mountains.
Right.
Need to get to Hottie.
And it sounds like, you know, he left his deer. They found his where he stopped and had a rest. And, you know, he probably knew that's his fucking forest. He probably knew they were there long before, you know, whatever. He was like, okay, fucking have my deer. I'm not dragging this any further. I'm gonna get the fuck out of here. But yeah, and I love the Yeti, but I don't think it's a fucking, if there is a Yeti, I don't think it's a raging fucking kill monster.
No, and again, the whole what else doesn't line up, right? So we've got a bunch of partially dressed people running around. We've got a fire. Now they did potentially split up, I guess. Maybe it's like a bad horror movie. I don't know.
Yeah, but you know, if you have this super apex predator of a creature,
it's more people with crushing chest injuries, I think. Or
not only that, it's not going to do that. It's going to fucking bite you, or it's going to, it's just going to grab your head and fucking shake you like and break your neck. Like, it's not going to have to think about creative ways to kill you. You know, it's just going to fucking do it. You know, I'm a 10-foot tall fucking 800-pound fucking gorilla. It's gonna fucking just pick me up and snap me like nothing. It doesn't.
Exactly. It's gonna make you.
Yeah, or grab me and just start whacking me off fucking trees. I mean, there's no.
Look at how apes fight.
Gorillas, they pound. Like they don't fight like, oh, I'm gonna grab you. They don't give
you a bear hug and crush your ribs. I'm going.
You ever see gorillas when they fight each other? They're like double fucking hammer fisting each other. You know, like. Okay. It doesn't make sense.
Unlikely to be the Yeti, folks.
I would love it to be a fucking
yeah. Unlikely to be the Yeti.
And I'm the guy who fucking loves Bigfoot, but I mean, I can't.
Your Bigfoot love.
I do. I love the idea, and I don't. It doesn't disprove that there's not a Yeti. It's just that I don't think a Yeti makes any sense. Not only that, why? Why would it? It doesn't make sense. Fuck. Anyway, the next one. Paradoxical undressing.
Yes, this is
and it's a real thing.
This is a real thing.
This is a real thing. Yeah. So they found that, you know, individuals who have had hypothermia or a lot of times that are lost in the wilderness, they may actually find them unclothed, undressed. And
they feel like they're getting too hot. So they
unbearably hot, apparently. Apparently it's a thing where they actually, the cold, and I don't know if that's your body's way of trying to minimize your suffering, right? I don't know.
By doing another type of suffering, by making it like you're on fire,
or by saying, okay, well, you know, you've reached the point of no return.
We're screwed.
Yeah, you're screwed, and this is basically you're going to take your clothes off and finish the deal. I mean, or you feel warm. I don't know the science behind it, but it is a real thing.
Like the old theory about rubbing snow on frostbite that's supposed to do anything.
Whoever fucking thought of that?
What a dumb idea, folks! You're applying cold to cold.
Put more cold on your fucking frozen digits? No,
yeah,
that's very dumb.
Very dumb. I'm trying to keep some steak from rotting here.
Well, that's it. And now they did only find 2 of the individuals with no clothing on. So
to say no clothing, none of them were
naked. They were in their undergarment. Yeah, so I would imagine
it would have been like a onesie,
like a long, long john
suit. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, but maybe they were in their tidy whities. Do we have tidy whities?
There's pictures. I saw all the pictures. Huh? I'm sure they would have had some sort of boxer or something in the 50s. But there were pictures, and it did appear to be a full onesie for both.
Like a union suit. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were barefoot for the most part, those ones. Yeah, so, and they looked like they died horribly.
A lot of this. I saw the one guy like this, curled up.
It's
one guy bit off his knuckle.
Yeah, it's not pretty. Like if you've got a weak stomach, you don't want to look at these pictures, especially if you look at all the happy. So that was my mistake. I'm going through reading the journals. I'm like, oh, these are lovely people. Look at them smiling and laughing and singing their song. Oh my God, they're all dead. They're all fucking dead. It's one of those things like, oh, I felt really sad at the end.
That's why I didn't read them. It humanizes them. This is
really humanizes them. They were.
You don't want to read any of these things.
They were just
you do, but it's going to be
fucking nice.
To know that
nice
the story
people.
ends. Doesn't end well for them.
And I knew how the story ended, but I still wanted to. I don't know.
Yeah, but the picture,
and I'm going to read
really
the book.
Help capture it. By the way, the pictures when you see, like I saw the one where the guy is basically like curled up like this.
Oh yeah,
and just like looks like an abject.
Well, the one that there's no eyes, like the two of them, no eyes. It does not look like an animal had started. There's something else. I don't know.
They do not pull any punches, folks. So if you're looking for the photos in the raw, the Soviets,
beware.
Released everything. They released everything.
Yeah, beware though. It is graphic, and we fucking warned you.
Podcast, which is clean
PG, not made for kids.
Oh, how old is kids? Like, what is kids now?
Well, it depends
like
what
and
kids.
Subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Yeah, we would enjoy that. So yeah, that's mine. Paradoxical undressing. You got another one? Because I got another one.
I don't want to go with there's the UFO one. This is where they go off and say the aliens did it, which
I think that's a fucking just a.
That's a throwaway. That's a throwaway, right?
Like that's aliens did it.
Aliens did it.
Now they did say the lights, but that made a lot. At first, when I heard that, I was like, oh God, now it's an alien thing. But I don't think so. It's
better to the military testing thing.
For sure, it does. Yeah, absolutely. So there was one other thing, and it happened somewhere else, and it killed 8 hikers, and it's called a katabatic wind.
The katabatic wind. Yes.
Yeah. And I never heard of this before, but it's very rare. It can happen basically on long slopes with mountainous ranges. And basically it's like gravity is taking this fucking wind and just pushing it down the slope, and it picks up speed. It actually picks up speed to like a hurricane sort of equivalency. So like 200 kilometers or 100 and some kilometers.
They link this to the slab avalanche thing, by the way, where they say this wind comes down, and what it would do is it would basically grab the upper layer and just move it. Like by itself, it would grab this massive layer of ice and snow and move it.
And this actually happened to 8 hikers in Sweden, where they were on a slope, but their body positions, like where they were killed, were all very and. They weren't anything like this trail. Like they were.
No, this is completely. This was
bizarro. This is
by whatever happened. They died afterwards.
That's right. They were fucking. These Swedes were killed by this wind storm of some sort. And it also. I mean, these are hurricanes, so any kind of loose material was also getting blown around too. So. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Aliens always.
Yeah, always aliens, right?
Always aliens. And I love aliens as well.
Support that at all. But they say that's where the radiation came from. It's like, well, radiation was on 2 of them. It's beta particles. And no other evidence that.
So the fact that, I mean, radiation comes from all sorts of things. We have, you have a phone in your pocket, my computer. There's everything has radiation.
The Earth itself.
Yes. So, but why did you bring a Geiger counter to a horse race?
Why did you bring a Geiger counter? Is that part of your kit when you go off and look for hikers?
And in 1959, it's not like you can go pick one up at Walmart. It's a big deal to have a Geiger counter. And
it's not just bring the Geiger, it's using the Geiger counter. It's not like this is part of our gear and maybe, it's just packed as part of our kit. It's like you used it.
What are you looking for, Russia?
What are you looking for?
Yeah, I have no more answers than I did when I first started reading this. I just
slab avalanche. I'm agreeing with the
slab avalanche. It just makes the most sense to me. Good night.
Sense. Good night. Slab avalanche.
I can't.
Death by misadventure.
I can't wrap my head around all the things. I guess my mind just doesn't let me. And,
There's
maybe
unanswered questions.
There is. And I couldn't put my finger on any one of these and say, this is definitively what happened. And a lot of people can. A lot of people can just do what you did and just go slab avalanche. That's it. I don't want to accept that it's that simple because they were so experienced. I think that, in their lifetime doing these hikes, I can't imagine that would be the first time they would ever have experienced an avalanche or something of that effect.
Something of that effect, right? The panic and just the way things went.
Yeah, they fucking lost it. They lost it. Yeah,
weird going on.
Avalanche or not, and maybe there was, but what the fuck? Because something else happened. They had to. They just, if you got your shit together like these kids did, to travel 4 days by fucking plane, train, or an automobile. Yes, that's a John Candy plug.
Such a great movie.
Pillows. Those aren't pillows. Where's your arm? Between two pillows. Those aren't pillows.
Those aren't pillows.
But and then have the fucking fortitude to like take on a journey like this. These aren't people that just give up. They don't die in the snow.
In their defense, it doesn't look like they necessarily gave up. But it certainly looks like they handled it literally the worst way possible. And again, the burns.
Yeah.
That's what kills me.
The burns, yeah. Why did he climb a tree? For no fucking reason. Why? What doesn't make no sense?
Were you looking for something to make sure you weren't being followed? Were you
right? What happened?
If the planes had left? Something weird happened here.
Something fucking weird happened. And I don't think we'll ever have the answers to it because why are their internal organs missing and why is the data missing on all of their autopsies?
Well, that's bureaucracy, I suppose, but
is it?
Yeah. Is it? You're right. Geiger counter.
I don't know. Geiger counter. That's one of the weirder parts.
The radioactivity is all these theories, regardless of which one, even the parachute mines.
Yeah.
Once you look to the radioactivity, you're like, what? That's the one thing that sort of goes and says it doesn't align with any of the potential theories other than saying, it just happened. Two of them happened to be radioactive. It was Russia at the time. That's what we did.
Yeah. And let's just say that, let's say it was the mines, there would have had to been cleanup, right? But you yourself know you can have one snowstorm and it looks like nobody's been at like a busy park. Yeah, one snowstorm, it's gone. It's all gone. Mm-hmm. It's a blanket. And, maybe there's a reason why nobody contacted them, or maybe the parents did call and somebody said, "Oh yeah, we'll look for them," and then they didn't until the 26th.
Yeah,
it doesn't make.
And they found all his footprints. They're like, "Hey, there's a bunch of footprints here."
9 exactly.
9 sets, exactly 9.
After an avalanche,
because nobody ran in somebody else's footsteps.
Yeah, fuck that. You fucking no idea. So what are we doing next week?
All right. So since we did Dyatlov Pass this week, the Yuba County 5, I said I would go off and talk about it. The Yuba County 5.
I like it.
America's Dyatlov Pass.
Okay. All right. I love
one.
this.
It's a weird one. You'll feel when you. It's not as freaky as the Dyatlov Pass one.
That's okay.
But it's still friggin' weird.
Yeah. Okay. I'm in for it. So the what's it called?
Yuba, YUBA.
YUBA.
5.
County 5.
It's basically known as America's Dyatlov Pass.
Awesome. Yeah, let's do it. All right. Well, I guess we're wrapping it up. I mean, I hope that we did.
So to summarize, let's do our summary first.
Sure. Yeah. 9
hikers died in the Ural Mountains near Peak 1079. Pass gets named posthumously to the Dyatlov Pass after Igor Dyatlov, the leader of this doomed expedition. Lots of weird shit.
Tons of weird shit.
Tons of weird stuff. This was not as simple, they died of exposure. They died of exposure, but all the stuff leading up to exposure and the ones who didn't die of exposures, like crushing chest injuries from what appear to be car impacts, like force equivalent to car impacts.
Very odd. Pressure. A lot of pressure.
Radioactivity.
Geiger counters. Man, I hope we did it some justice. There's so much information, folks, that
Dyatlofpass.com if you're interested in more information.
Read about it. It's a good read. I mean,
careful about the journals, folks, because you're gonna get attacked.
It's a fucking.
Then you get to look at the pictures of them.
It's not easy. It's not easy. You actually feel like you know them a little bit, and then, well, yeah, you know what happens. All right. Well, thank you very much for watching the OC. I'm Phil, my co-host Corey, and we will see you next week for some Yuba County 5. Right? Yuba County 5. All right. Take care of yourselves. Good night.
See you, folks.